Okay, welcome to another HP3 webinar and podcast. Today we're welcoming Chloe to the team as our sleep coach. So I'm going to hand over the mic to Chloe, who can tell us all about herself, her research and the services on offer. So welcome to the team, Chloe.
Thank you very much. So hello everyone. As Tim said, today I'm doing an introductory webinar to basically introduce myself and my services as a sleep coach for HP3. So today the webinar is just going to go over why sleep matters for every athlete. There we go. So webinar structure for today, I'm just going to run through a bit about myself and my research, as I'm predominantly an academic and researcher full time. I'm then going to touch on the importance of sleep and why we sleep. I'll then run into the consequences of sleep loss, specifically in relation to performance. I'm going to go through some sleep myths that we are commonly quite misled through social media. And then also I'm going to touch on an overview of the sleep services and how I may be able to support you. So just a little bit about myself. So I've spent the last 8 years in Liverpool doing quite a few different degrees and bits of education. So I've done a degree in sport and exercise science. And from this, I followed into a master's in sport nutrition. So I'm also an accredited nutritionist. And then I've just come towards the end of my PhD, which was in sleep and chronobiology, specifically looking into sleep loss and how it affects athletic performance. And then in terms of my sort of applied experience over the last few years, I have consulted on research studies regarding sleep elements, but also looked into sleep strategies for individuals and groups in the performance setting. I've also supported athletes and para-athletes at overseas training and competition. And I've also done some damage limitation sessions with athletes. So this is mainly where we've prepared individuals going into extreme environments, whether that be high and low temperatures, different humidities and altitudes, just to ensure they're best equipped for where they're going to. So onto my areas of research, I have predominantly focused on sleep restriction and how this affects sort of our physical and cognitive performance, also looking at psychological measures such as mood state and how it can be influenced. I've therefore gone into napping strategies and how maybe this intervention can help people when they're suffering with sleep loss. So when we can time a nap, how long a nap needs to be, and what variables a nap can actually benefit. I've also looked into sleep measurement, so the validity of consumer sleep devices, whether that be a Fitbit, a Garmin, an Oura Ring that you might use regularly, and how this compares to actually lab-based equipment such as polysomnography and research-grade devices. And lastly, I've also touched on chrononutrition. So this is the interaction between sort of our body's rhythm and our sleep and what we intake in food. So I've looked at food consumption, timing of meals, and also how certain supplements might influence our sleep. So moving on to the pillars of health, there are many different versions of this, whether it be our psychological and mental well-being, our nutritional intake, our exercise, but sleep is one pillar of health that is often overlooked. You'll see in a lot of sports settings that you've got a full-time nutritionist, an S&C coach, but you might not always have that sleep element, despite it being very, very important for successful performance. So ultimately, why do we sleep? There's tons of research out there, but there's still a lot we don't know. But ultimately, we know that it's a very complex process where many different things happen in order for us to rest, recover, and then also learn. So it might be cell restitution, muscle repair, memory recall, and all these things together allow us to optimally function day to day. So when it comes to the factors that influence sleep, we can mainly split these into individual and environmental factors. And these aren't all of the ones that can influence, but these are just the main ones I'm going to go through today. So if we first look at the individual factors, it can be things like a chronotype, which is your individual preference. So you might be someone who is a morning type. They like to get up, rise early and go to bed early. Or it might be someone who prefers to stay up late at night. And this can also influence our training and how that works for us. It might also be genetic, It could be our age. So we know that when we're younger, we typically sleep more, and this sleep duration might decline with age. And it can also be sex-specific differences. So we actually know from a lot of recent research that males and females do differ when it comes to sleep. And we don't yet know the degree of this, but it's mainly to do with the hormonal changes. So through the menstrual cycle and then ultimately menopause, it can lead to females being a lot more at a higher risk of insomnia and different sleep disorders. So ensuring that we can accommodate for these differences is very important. When it comes to environmental factors, again, there's quite a few things it could be. So it could be sleep hygiene, which again is its own array of different measures, but it could be screen use, nutritional intake, caffeine consumption, work and stress-related tasks before bed that can all influence our sleep. It might be sleep environment. So a lot of you probably notice that when you go to competition or you're on holiday, you don't sleep as well in a hotel, and it's just because it's unfamiliar and our body is trying to adapt to the new scenario and setting. It can also be training schedule. So there's often a big tug of war, let's say, between getting all our training sessions in and still being able to optimally recover and rest. I know myself from swimming competitively for a number of years, you might train multiple times a day, very early and very late at night, and that really shortens that opportunity to sleep. And lastly, another important one is travel. So when you travel, for example, for competition, you might go through multiple time zones and be subjected to jet lag symptoms. And if you don't have much time between landing in the new location and competing, it can have a massive effect on your performance because your body is completely out of sync. So when we take all this together, just like you would with your nutrition or your coaching, you really need to optimize sleep individually to that person and their preferences in order for it to suit them and work for them. So if we move on to the prevalence of poor sleep specifically in elite athletes, a lot of research shows that sleep issues are very, very prevalent, and this is across all different sports. It's looking at around up to 50% of athletes report sleep complaints, and this is mainly through subjective questionnaires and assessments. And then when we look at individual sports, these people are a lot more likely to have sleep complaints compared to team sports. Some research saying 3.5 times more likely. And when you actually speak to these athletes, they a lot of the time say it's due to the stress and the burden that's on one individual athlete. And also a lot of the time their training is a lot more demanding. So this is something to really consider. A recent study that was done on probably one of the biggest research populations in ultramarathon runners showed that 80% of these individuals report high incidences of sleep deprivation, particularly during multi-day events. And this can lead to a lot of symptoms such as falling and hallucinations, which ultimately impair performance. And then when we look at, again, specifically endurance and ultra endurance sports, these athletes are commonly day in, day out reporting excessive fatigue. And this may be accompanied by midnight arousals and awakenings, and it could be night sweats and restlessness. And these can be both during competition, but also in training periods. So it's really important to look into these specific symptoms they're experiencing and how we can combat them. So obviously I just went through sort of the consequence of sleep loss and how sleep loss and how prevalent it is. But when we look at specific factors that can affect athletes specifically, you might notice an increase in injury risk or struggling to recover from injury, sorry. It might be cognition, so it might be impaired. You might find it hard to respond to cues and react the same or be unable to make decisions. It might be affecting your immunity. So you might be more susceptible to illness, or you can't shake off sort of the common cold and flu, and it's affecting performance. You might notice that your training adaptations are blunted. So you're putting everything into your training and your nutrition and optimizing it, but you're not having enough rest, and therefore it does not translate to competition and success that you'd expect. And lastly, a big one is perceived effort. So when we lack sleep, often everything feels harder. Everything feels at a higher intensity than it would after normal sleep. And so our pain perception might also be lower and things are just generally harder. So these are all things to really consider when we might be subjected to sleep loss, because unfortunately, it's not always optional. It just happens. So it's how it might affect us. So if we look at sleep interventions, these are three that are specifically used a lot of the time in endurance-based sports. So it might be pre-race sleep extension. So that is the week prior to training and the night before. We try to increase the sleep we have in a 24-hour period. So if you have, say, 6 hours a night of sleep, we might increase it to 7.5, and that might help us. We can also do strategic napping, which this might be particularly mid-race. So at aid stations, we have naps just to help with that sleep loss. And it can also be sleep environment optimization. So this links a lot to sleep hygiene. But you might find that mid-race, you go to have a nap, but you're in an aid station where there's lots of light, there's lots of noise, there's lots of people about, and you actually can't induce sleep despite the excessive fatigue. So it's how we can make that environment suited to you to help you get to sleep as quick as possible. And when these strategies have been used in endurance sports specifically, we've seen faster finishing times, a reduction in incidents during the race, and then efficient recovery post-race, which if it's mid-season, that allows us to recover quicker for the next race that we might have lined up. So now I'm just going to go through a few sleep myths. And we know in social media, there is a lot of information misled to us, not just in sleep, in nutrition, in health, and so many areas. So it's really important that we address these and really give the facts that come from these myths. So I'm just going to go over 4 common ones that I have been asked many times myself. So the first one being the more sleep, the better. Obviously, I advocate good sleep, but it has to be within guidelines. Just like a lack of sleep, an excess of sleep can also be bad. Individuals have a preference to sleep duration. So, for example, I know 8 hours works for me, but some people might need 7 and some people might need 9. But if we start hitting sort of 10, 11 hours a night, this excessive sleep can actually have negative effects. So it's about finding this happy balance and what you need as an individual. The second one is your body can adapt to a lack of sleep. So many people probably wish this was true because they're constantly subjected to sleep restriction and sleep loss, whether it be work, parenting, performance, travel. However, unfortunately, it's not the case. So as I just went through, there are many consequences to sleep loss. And if you're used to functioning on sleep loss, you might not necessarily notice the effects, but when we compare them to normal sleep, it can be massive. And obviously, the effects can differ dependent on how acute the phase is, whether it's over consecutive nights or just 24 hours. Obviously, the amount of symptoms will increase as the sleep restriction increases, but it's important to note that we cannot adapt our bodies. We cannot prepare for it. It's against our body's rhythm. The third one is the weekend is for catching up on lost sleep. Obviously, we have this idea that sleeping in on a weekend is a luxury. It's great. We don't have to set that alarm. We can get up when we want. But as soon as we have a different retiring and waking time on a weekday to a weekend, we completely throw off our body's rhythm. We should always try and adopt the same sleep and wake cycle as much as possible. Obviously, there might be some drift within this period. But if we don't, it's just like going on holiday when our bodies are trying to adapt to a new time zone. We're throwing it back and forward, and it is just really not good in the long term. And the last one just being that daytime naps are bad for you. I get a lot of people telling me it's not good to sleep in the day. Like, why would you sleep in the day? I'm sleeping at night, or I can't do it, or I didn't feel any benefit from it. I feel groggy. But this is all to do with the planning of the nap. Some people sleep too long or not enough, or they don't sleep at the right time of day in line with their body's rhythm. So it's all around optimizing the napping strategies. And I can assure you, if you plan them properly and strategically, you will get benefit from a nap. So now that I've kind of hopefully brought home the importance of sleep and how it can affect an individual, hopefully from my sleep services and one-to-one consultations, I can offer support. And this is not just to people that are suffering with sleep necessarily. It can just be to people who might not be having sleep issues, but they can optimize certain things to help their performance. So how can a sleep coach support you? There are many, many things we can work on, but just a few here to go through. So it could be pre-screening and personalized sleep assessments. So we can go through sort of questionnaires and discussions to identify specific issues you're facing and evaluate them individual factors that I've mentioned a few times. It could be sleep hygiene optimization. So these could be the smallest tweaks that make a massive effect on an individual. It could be circadian rhythm alignment and travel preparation. So you know you're traveling for competition, and we can prepare you as much as possible to reduce the effects that travel can have on you. It might be pre-race, mid-race, and post-race recovery strategies. So pre-race, a lot of people might have bad sleep because they're anxious. So it's about preparing them as best as possible to ensure they have optimal sleep before they race. During the race, it might be, like I said before, napping strategies at sleep aid stations and different things. And then post-race, it's ensuring that we recover as best as possible. I know a lot of people, after they do multi-day races, they actually struggle to sleep despite excessive fatigue. And it's about trying to bring down sort of the stimulation post race and ensuring that we can recover and we can get optimal sleep. And lastly, it could be providing educational resources and materials that you can then go on to use multiple times, and you can embed them into your training. So lastly, I just wanted to go through a quick quote that I saw, and I believe is very, very important for not just athletes, but all individuals. So to achieve success, rest is just as important as hard work. So you can put everything into your training blocks, everything into your nutrition, everything can be on point. But without rest, you are never going to reach your optimal and your most successful self. And I really hope that's something that you've got from today, and it's making you reflect on your sleep and how it currently is. So obviously, I'd just like to say a big thank you for listening. Please feel free to contact me. I've left my email address below, but I'm also on the website now as well if you want to find out more about myself. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Chloe. Yeah, all really, really important points. And absolutely, I think people's awareness about that importance of sleep is definitely increasing, and realizing that, this is where the adaptations occur. We can do all the training, but unless we can actually absorb and adapt, and that happens obviously with good sleep and good nutrition and good recovery. So yeah, bringing your services into the team is absolutely fantastic, and really, really honored that you're joining our team and supporting our athletes. So yeah, do have a look at the links sort of down below. So if you want to get in touch with Chloe, obviously the email's there, but then I'll put the links to the forms that you can fill in on the website to arrange a consultation if you'd like some additional support with your sleep. So thanks for listening. Hopefully you found that useful, and tune in for more upcoming webinars in order to help improve your performance in terms of health and life in general. Okay, thank you very much.